I wanted to make a video pretty much about the 12th house, specifically people who have their sun in the 12th house. Uh, I'll go a little bit into detail about other planets in the 12th house as well. The 12th house, or planets in it, are associated with any type of confinement, prisons, asylums, stuff like that. But we have to remember that the 12th house is the house of Pisces. Pisces is a very generous, selfless, giving sign. I think the reason why this house ended up being associated with prisons and confinements and whatnot is because when you have a planet in the 12th house, you end up giving yourself in that aspect, whether it be your moon in the 12th house, like you give your emotions up, you kind of surrender your own emotions. You're generous in that aspect. You pay more attention to other people's emotional needs if it's your moon. You pay more attention to the well being of other people's egos if it's your sun in the 12th house. Um, and being selfless like that, you're also taking away from yourself. So much generosity and selflessness kind of imprisons you. Everyone I know who has their sun in the 12th house, even if they're only an acquaintance to me, um, I've seen them display great acts of generosity and selflessness, and they really care about other people, especially when those people feel neglected or ignored or like they don't matter. For the most part, people with their suns in the 12th house will not really act like their sun sign. They're not stereotypical Leos, or they're not stereotypical Aries or anything like that. They'll act more like their ascendant. The only exception really is if it's Pisces in the 12th house. Pisces in the 12th house is still a very stereotypical Pisces because Pisces is the 12th house. People with 12th house suns can sometimes feel trapped in their own reality, sort of, and that's where the feeling of imprisonment comes in. They seek, creativity and I guess freedom to an extent, to especially when they're growing up, as a teenager and stuff. They might look for a lot of escapes to reality, distractions like video games and music and things like that. I said that people with their sun in the 12th house will act more like their ascendant, and their ascendant is also influenced by whatever planet rules their ascendant. For example, Libra and Taurus are ruled by Venus. So if you're in Aries with Taurus rising, with Aries in the 12th house, um, then your placement of Venus will also affect your ascendant and how you project yourself to the world. Also, I'd like to point out that having your sun in the 12th house usually means that your ascendant is the sign that comes directly after your sun sign. But that's not always the case. Sometimes if your houses aren't very proportionate, or if they're different sizes or stuff like that, you could have a 12th house sun, and maybe with the ascendant being the same sign as your sun. Virgo and Gemini are ruled by Mercury, so if you're a my cat just jumped on the computer. If you're a Gemini rising, or I think she just moved the screen too. My cat's really wreaking havoc right now. So if you're a Gemini rising or a Virgo rising, your placement of Mercury will affect the way you act in your everyday life. For example, I'm a Virgo rising, but I do have Leo in Mercury. Mercury and Leo. Why do I always say that wrong? Yeah, I have Mercury and Leo, so I'm not so much the typical Virgo rising. I don't always dress modestly. I like to be kind of creative and a little bit over the top in the way I dress sometimes. So yeah, the ruling planet of your ascendant will also affect your ascendant and have a big impact on the way that you act, especially if you have your sun in the 12th house. Anyone with their sun in their 12th house might seem like they don't really have a lot of depth to them when you first start talking to them, because you can only see that outer layer for the most part. You can't really see their ego side. The sun is the ego. An interesting situation is a um, a Leo rising with their sun in the 12th house, because the Leo ascendant is ruled by the sun, and if the sun is in the 12th house, then that's kind of an infinite loop of 12th house things going on, things that you can't really see so easily. The personality will be a lot of a paradox. They might not act much like a Leo either, even though it's their ascendant, because the sun, the ruling planet of Leo, is in a different sign, most likely, and it's also in the 12th house. There are a lot of really interesting people with their suns in their 12th house. If you can see past that sort of superficial persona and, you know, try to get to know them a little bit and ask them some questions, you'll probably realize that they're a really nice and interesting person. I don't think that these people are mean. Some people think that the 12th house, sun in the 12th house, means that you will spend a lot of your life in prison or something like that. Hi, Arya. Hello. That's not true for most people, though. I don't really know of anyone who has their sun in their 12th house that spent a lot of their life in confinement, but we don't really know most of those people anyway, so. Sun in the 12th house does mean you can be very ignored, though. People might not notice you as much. If you have your moon in the 12th house, you won't really recognize your own emotions that much. You'll probably focus a little bit more on the emotions of other people. So yeah, that's all I really wanted to say right now. I just kind of wanted to add some clarity to the subject and perhaps a different perspective. Um, I hope you liked the video. I noticed most of my videos have more dislikes than likes. I don't know why. If you're a subscriber and you have a specific type of video you want me to make, you can just say something. I'm sorry, my channel doesn't really have a lot of focus. I just do whatever I feel like doing, really. Sorry.